Hello everyone, it's Hannah here from Virtually Fluent. Today I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to learn phrasal verbs in English. I know it's a really intensive, difficult topic in English, but hopefully these tips will help you learn them in a way that will be effective for you in English. Now, a lot of people stress when it comes to the topic of phrasal verbs. Actually, there's not really any particular reason to stress because learning phrasal verbs is exactly the same as learning a list of vocabulary, really, in English. So it's nothing to stress about. Hopefully these tips will help you a little bit. And if you want to go into further detail about this topic, you can, of course, check out our phrasal verbs course. I've left the link in the description below. Also, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media pages. We have Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, and I've left all of those links in the description below. And of course, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel too. We do have a few other videos which are connected to phrasal verbs on our YouTube channel, particularly the theory and the grammar of how phrasal verbs work and also the correct pronunciation. Yes, there's a very special pronunciation. You'll find those links at the end of today's video. So let's get started with these 3 pieces of advice. So my first piece of advice is to stop learning an entire list of phrasal verbs in English. This is not really going to help you. You are not really going to absorb this vocabulary, these phrasal verbs, and most likely will probably never actually use these in your conversational English or written English. So stop doing that. When you see a really long list of verbs, you can get very stressed, very overwhelmed. And this is not only a waste of space in your mind for phrasal verbs you're probably never going to use, but it also damages your learning process in English and that very precious time that you actually have learning English. So stop doing that. And the other thing I recommend that you stop doing is to select one verb, for example, to break, and looking at all of the definitions that can be used to break into, to break out of, to break up. This is also not going to help you. If anything, it's just going to confuse you because you go to write down the verb to break in an email, for example, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, which particle do I need to use with this verb? You've learnt all of them, but actually you can't remember the important ones. So stop learning phrasal verbs like this. What I recommend is learning phrasal verbs in context. So don't specifically focus on this topic. Read an article that you enjoy in English, watch a film or a TV series in English. And when you notice a verb that you don't know, check to see if it's a phrasal verb. It's very likely that there's going to be a little particle sitting after it. Learn that phrasal verb so it is in context. You will also have a better understanding as to how it's actually used by native English speakers if you're learning it in context. So that is my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is to really learn the theory behind phrasal verbs. If you've learnt a phrasal verb, for example, to look up, and you've looked up this phrasal verb, which means to research something, then you really need to understand how it works. Is it transitive or intransitive? Is it separable or inseparable? Is it a prepositional verb? You really need to understand the theory of how phrasal verbs work, because once you've learned a phrasal verb, you know the definition. Great, we've done step 1. Now the next step is to try and integrate it into your own English. You understand the definition, but do you know how to write it? Did you know that perhaps the object can go in between the verb and the particle? Did you know that perhaps if you use an object pronoun, that can only be in between and it can't go after? You must learn the theory behind phrasal verbs. We do have a great video that explains all of this on our YouTube channel. The link will be at the end of this video. And not just the theory, but also the pronunciation. We've got another video that explains what the rules are for word stress, for the pronunciation of phrasal verbs. Learn all of these things because then you have a full understanding of how your brand new phrasal verb, for example, to look up, can be used in a sentence. All this information that I've talked about, all this theory, can be found in an online dictionary, a good and reliable online dictionary. So that's my second piece of advice, is learn the theory, understand how phrasal verbs work. And my final piece of advice is to put them into practice. What is the point of learning a word that you're never going to use in your real everyday English? Once you have learnt a phrasal verb, write down example sentences, questions, affirmative sentences, negative. Use all of the tenses. Really understand how this phrasal verb can be used in English. It is essential. Otherwise, you will have spent time learning a phrasal verb. Okay, you know if it's transitive or intransitive, separable, inseparable. But actually, in real life, you're never going to use it again. That's basically wasted learning time in English. So please put your new phrasal verbs into practice. Set yourself a challenge. Okay, I must use this phrasal verb at least once in conversation this month. It doesn't have to be a really long, complicated challenge, but you must try and use this and practice it. So those are my 3 tips and pieces of advice for helping you learn phrasal verbs in a good way and also practice using them so you're not wasting your learning time in English. As I said, you'll find some excellent links at the end of today's video for other explanation videos on phrasal verbs. We also have a course. I've left the link in the description below. But for now, that's everything on my advice of phrasal verbs. This is Hannah from Virtually Fluent, bringing English to life.